Welcome to Clear Creek Community Church Online. We exist to lead unchurched people to become fully devoted followers of Jesus Christ. We are a people, not a place, and are sent to make a difference in our world. Clear Creek gathers for worship online and across multiple campuses in the Bay Area of Houston. For more information, visit us at clearcreek.org.
Welcome to Clear Creek Community Church Online. We hope that today will be one more step in you exploring faith in Jesus, growing in community, and joining us to make a difference in our world. Before we jump in, you should know, more than providing online content, we want to connect with you in community. We hope that today would be a preview of who we are as a church family, and that you would connect with us at one of our 5 campuses in the Houston Bay Area real soon. Or connect with us online at clearcreek.org, where you can find information about our locations and worship service times. It's also a place where you can find details on how we serve in community, how we grow in small group, how to give online, or find upcoming events and resources. Look, wherever you are today, we are glad you're engaging with us. If you're encouraged today or challenged in some way, share a link to this video with a friend or someone you think really needs to see it. We're glad you're here.
Well, that's one young woman's recollection of her family and dinner with her family. In my family, if we were to look at this table over here and I was to go way back when I was just a kid at home, my brother would have sat. His name's Hal on the other end. He's the oldest. I sat next to him. Then my sister Tammy, older than I, my dad would sit on this side, and then my mom on the side that has no chair, which is appropriate because she rarely sat down anyway when we were eating dinner together. And my brother, he would always put his finger in my milk just to irritate me every night. And then my sister would just mix up her food. All the food on her plate would be mixed up, I think partly just to irritate my brother. And we had great memories. I mean, tons of laughter and not so good memories. I mean, memories where things were said that were pretty painful. You know, when families gather around the table, it's a big deal. It's not just about food. Something happens in the soul of people, in the emotional world of people. Because when people are dining together over and over again, what happens is, well, sometimes fears get fed. And sometimes people get really warmed up in their hearts. And sometimes souls get shaped. That's why in this whole series, we're talking about reclaiming the table. We're talking about taking serious the whole idea that what happens around the table can affect our lives, even affect us into adulthood for all of our children, and even affect us into eternity. You believe this? You should know that Jesus believed this. I remind you in the first message, we pointed out in the book, A Meal with Jesus, Tim Chester said, there are 3 ways in the New Testament that the New Testament completes the sentence, the Son of Man came. And the 3 are these. The Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. The Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. And the Son of Man has come eating and drinking. And Chester says that the first 2 are the purpose of Jesus coming. Jesus came to serve. He came to seek and to save the lost. But the third is how he came. This is how Jesus did his ministry. He came eating and drinking. And he was so serious about this that he did evangelism, sharing his faith with others. He did discipleship, helping others learn what it meant to follow him with maybe a piece of fish, some bread, a pitcher of wine, and lingering long over the table to talk about the things that matter most. And it seems fewer and fewer people really embrace this idea these days. We pointed out already in a recent survey, 70% of respondents said they grew up eating with their family at the dining table. Today, 48% say that. I mean, in one generation, that's the drop. And so here's the deal. I want to prompt you to reclaim the table. To reclaim the table, if you're a person with a family, or even if you're a person not. I mean, that you would reclaim the table and engage in the relationships around food when you eat, and allow God to do at your table that one thing that we all desperately need. For you to even be an agent to bring that one thing that we also desperately need to the table. So what is that one thing? Well, I want to show it to you in the scriptures. We're going to look at a couple of different passages together. And then after unpacking those, I want to get really practical about what it looks like to bring that one thing to the table. All right, so here we go. Here's the first passage. It is in Luke chapter 11, beginning in verse 37. It says, while Jesus was speaking, a Pharisee asked him to dine with him. So he went in and he reclined at table. Now, this is pause. So this Pharisee hears Jesus teach. He wants to hear more of what he says. He says, Jesus, how about going to lunch with me? And Jesus came eating and drinking. So he says, sure, I'll go to lunch with you. And what this Pharisee doesn't know is that this lunch is going to take a turn really early on that's going to be difficult from the start. Next verse. The Pharisee was astonished to see that he, Jesus, did not first wash before dinner. Now, this isn't like mama told you to go wash up for dinner. It's a different kind of washing, right? For this guy, this Pharisee, his washing was this ritualistic kind of washing. He was a part of a group of people that had, get this, over 600 different rules that they went by as a way of trying to know and follow God. And washing before dinner was one of those. But these are man-made rules. They're not in the Bible. And so he's washing up, doing the rules, and he looks over and Jesus, who's this religious teacher, he thought Jesus would be washing up too. Jesus isn't, because Jesus and his disciples did not keep these man-made rules. And so Jesus sees the look on this guy's face when Jesus isn't going to do the washing. And Jesus then begins to explain to him what's going on. I mean, he gives his lunch buddy a lesson, and it's kind of a hard lesson. And it says in verse 39, and the Lord said to him, now you Pharisees cleanse the outside of the cup and of the dish, but inside you're full of greed and wickedness. You fools. Did not he who made the outside make the inside also? But give as alms those things that are within, and behold, everything is clean for you. Now let's just start by saying, whoa. I mean, come on, Jesus, chill a little bit, right? I mean, this is not Jesus meek and mild. This is Jesus with an attitude at lunch, it seems anyway. But notice, he's not just addressing this guy, he's addressing all of this group of people called Pharisees. Because one of the characteristics of these religious Pharisees was that they gave attention to the outside. I mean, they were focused on the things that influenced their image or things that everyone could see. But what they didn't do is give a lot of attention to the inside. Those things that were matters of the heart, matters of character. And so Jesus could see how this is going to impact people, right? And so he's willing to enter into the difficult moment because of the benefit that it could bring. So Jesus says, listen, it's like this. You know, you put the glass on the table. The glass is clean on the outside. Before you pour the tea in, though, you look in and there's like mold and roach droppings. You're not drinking out of that glass. Because what matters what's on the inside, if it's clean on the inside, that's what matters more than whether it's clean on the outside. And Jesus says, that's how it is with faith. Religious people have rules to follow. But the rules do not change the heart. Now listen, you can be proud of keeping rules. You can be ashamed of not keeping rules. Other people can be impressed with you because you keep rules. But the rules do not make you a different person from the inside out. And that's Jesus' point. A real encounter with God makes you a different person from the inside out. Now, you may say, interesting, but what does that have to do with reclaiming the table? What does that have to do with what I do with my family or with my friends? Well, I think you have to understand that we have around our tables not just our children or not just our friends, we have Pharisees around the table. Did you know your kids are Pharisees? Oh, not all your kids. I would say when my family got together, not my family of origin, but my family with my girls, probably 3 of us were Pharisees. You know, Pharisees are people who really think the rules are going to get them somewhere. And so what happened is that Jesus sees what's going on with the Pharisees and how they don't really understand who he is and why he came. And so he had, this is the second passage, a series of stories to tell them to try to give them some insight as to who he really is, because they didn't understand him not keeping the rules, right? So in Luke chapter 15, we see 3 famous parables: the lost sheep, the lost coin, the lost son. And Jesus tells these parables to explain himself. But to understand them, you have to know where he begins in Luke chapter 15, verses 1 and 2. It says this: "Now the tax collectors and sinners were all drawing near to hear him. And the Pharisees and the scribes grumbled, saying, 'This man receives sinners and eats with them.'" So tax collectors and sinners are the opposite of the Pharisees. I mean, these are the people that have left God out. And they're drawn to Jesus. And Jesus eats with them, which means it's a welcome to them. And that makes these religious people crazy, right? And so Jesus tells these 3 parables to explain himself. He says, all these parables are going to show something gets lost, there's a search for it, and when it's found, there's this great celebration. So the shepherd loses a sheep, he goes to look for it, and he finds it, and there's a party. A woman loses a coin, she looks for it, she finds it, and there's a party. And then there's this father whose son is lost, but that son finally comes home, and there's a party. And all of these are images of how Jesus is portraying the sinners, you know, these tax collectors. But in the third story, Jesus adds a character. And this character is the older brother. And in this story, he's helping the Pharisees see not only who those other sinners are, but how they themselves are sinners too. And so here's how the story goes, just briefly. There was a father, he had 2 sons. The younger of the 2 wanted his inheritance early. So it was like his son telling his father, I really kind of wish you're dead, but since you're not dead, can I just have what I'm going to get when you do die so I can get out of here? And as offensive as that sounds, it was even more offensive in that culture. And so the father gives him his part of the inheritance, and he goes and he blows it in wild living. And once he blows it, he's got this terrible job. He doesn't have his basic needs met. He thinks, well, my father's not going to accept me back, but I can go back to my house and just ask him if I can become like one of the hired men. And his father sees him far off before he ever gets there. He runs to him. And before he can even make his case for maybe becoming one of the hired men, his father puts a coat on his back and a ring on his finger, and he calls his friends, and he throws this great party to celebrate the fact that his son has come home. Now, while that's going on, the older brother, again, 2 sons, the older brother was out working in the field, and when he comes near the house, he hears music, he hears dancing. He asks the servant, what's going on? And the servant says, your brother's come home. Your father's throwing a party and welcome to your brother. But the older brother is not happy about this. Listen to it, beginning in verse 28 of Luke 15. But he was angry and refused to go in. His father came out and entreated him. But he answered his father, look, these many years I have served you. I have never disobeyed your command. And yet you never gave me a young goat that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you kill the fattened calf for him. And he said to him, son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. And it was fitting to celebrate and be glad, for this your brother was dead and is alive. He was lost and is found. Now, why is this older brother so upset? And it's because his father has welcomed his brother, the one who's done all these bad things. He's welcomed him, and it makes him feel like all these things that he's tried to do, all this goodness that he's tried to do to earn his father's love, to demonstrate how his father should be proud of him, all of that seems to be meaningless because his father has given all of those things to his brother who wasn't a good guy, who didn't keep the rules. And so it seems like it doesn't really matter when you're working for it. And that's Jesus' point. Jesus' point is if you're working for God's love, for God's approval, it's going to frustrate you. Because God's approval and his love is a free gift. And it's given to all. Both the really religious people and those who are really irreligious. Both to the Pharisee and to the prodigal. So don't miss this. Every table is filled with younger brothers and older brothers. You are one or the other. And at the table, we intend to experience just food, right? But we can experience with both the religious older brother and the prodigal younger brother, we can experience the one thing that we most desperately need, the one thing, the only thing that changes the religious heart and the prodigal heart. And that one thing is grace. I mean, real grace. A kind of love that's given even though not deserved. A kind of life that's given that we don't deserve. And so to reclaim the table then is to extend grace to everyone who comes. To your religious Pharisee kid, to your friend who's blown up his life or her life, and to the wayward sons and daughters. They come to the table, and we are agents of grace. So what does that look like? Well, I'm sure we could talk about a lot of things, but I want to mention 3 simple things to you. Imagine at your table, you're a single person, you're a married person, whatever. Imagine at your table, people sit at your table with you, and you extend to them grace. How do you do that? The first thing I would say is we give thanks to God. We give thanks. Simple as that. Sometimes the prayer before we eat is called saying grace. We say grace. So hear me say this. I'm not saying that we should just pray over the food. That's not what I'm saying. I mean, maybe you should, maybe you shouldn't. If you're just going through the motions, the outward motions like the Pharisee did, then I would say you probably shouldn't. Because you're doing something no different than the Pharisee who's washing his hands, right? You're just kind of going through the motions. But on the other hand, if you're acknowledging that the sacred act of sharing a meal is a gift, and you're not just thankful for the food, more importantly, you're thankful for all these people that you're with, or maybe just this other person that you're with. And you're so thankful for what God has done in you and in that other person that you know that this is a sacred moment where you have the opportunity to convey not just words, but this deep sense of gratitude for what God has done for you. And if you see this moment as this life-giving moment, then you should gush in gratitude. Just gush in your thankfulness to God. After all, this meal is a daily reminder and a foreshadowing of the day when we will share the marriage supper of the Lamb in the culmination of the age. I'm saying it's pointing toward that day when all that God has promised becomes real for us. And it was only made possible because Jesus shed blood to forgive our sins. He was raised to reconcile us to himself. And Jesus did all these things so that we could know grace. And when you feel that way, you can give grace, you can say grace, because you see this as a sacred moment. So that's the first thing I would say. Just make sure when you sit down that your heart is filled with gratitude for what God has done for you, and let that ooze out of you. All right, second thing, accept one another. Grace flows where people accept one another. Now notice, I didn't say you have to agree with one another. You ever have a meal with people you don't agree with? Yeah, come on. And Jesus did too. He went to a meal with this Pharisee, for heaven's sake. He didn't agree with everything about the Pharisee, but he had a grace to give him where he could feel accepted. I think this saying is true, that people don't remember what you say, they remember how you made them feel. So, did you make them feel loved and accepted? I mean, the people that share a meal with you, do you know that's true of your children? You know, parents, our kids, they don't have the emotional maturity to interpret what's going on in our life. And so all of our emotions are interpreted as something to do with them because they're little narcissists, right? Everything's about them. And so if you're angry, they think it's because of them. And if you're happy, it's because of them. And if you're sad, it's because of them. And that's why they're going to spend, some time on a counselor's couch in a couple of decades to try to figure out, that you said you loved them, but they didn't always feel that. And I'm simply saying that you have an opportunity as we gather to share a meal to constantly pour out to your kids an understanding that they are accepted. And not just your kids. People. The people that you would share a meal with. Again and again, we can just show a kind of acceptance. Now, how do you do that? I'll give you a couple of examples or ways to do that. One is to listen to one another with your eyes. Listen to one another with your eyes. That's what Jesus did. His words to the Pharisee were not in response to something that the Pharisee said. It was what he saw on the face of the Pharisee. He saw what was going on with the Pharisee, and that's what he responded to. And so when we learn to listen in a powerful way, like with our eyes, it makes all the difference. Communication experts say that 58% of our communication is nonverbal. Only 7% of our communication has to do with the words that we say. And maybe that's why when I was a student pastor, I would oftentimes hear students say, my parents just don't listen to me. And I knew that wasn't true. But I also knew that maybe their parents didn't know how to listen to them. That they didn't know how to watch and see what was going on instead of just hear the words and then ask questions to draw out more from the person. People who are full of grace give the gift of understanding and significance because they listen to other people well. You need someone to hear you, to listen to you. And others need that from you. And when we do that, we're giving grace. Another way is we bless one another with your words. You might say, you mean the way Jesus blessed this Pharisee? Actually, yes. See, Jesus didn't go off on the Pharisee. His act of correction was an act of grace. He gave him an opportunity to believe and to repent. He gave him an opportunity to understand that it's what happens inside of him that reconciles him to God. And when that gets right, the rest of the things can become right. And so Jesus used words to bless him. I had lunch today with a pastor friend here in the city, his wife, and Susan and I had lunch with them. And I'm really grateful for them. I'm not sure I expressed that fully until he shocked me. He looked across the table and he said, we love you. We're for you. And we're so grateful to be doing this in our city together. I was eating my salad. But, he spoke some words that affected me. It gave me grace. Your words have power. Your words, they make worlds if you're a parent. And maybe if you're not. Because there are a lot of people who carry pain to a table, and your words of grace can be used by God to bring healing to a lot of pain. So, accept one another. This is a gift to have the moment to, express gratitude and accept one another. And thirdly, to celebrate life. Celebrations mark what's important. And a big part of discipleship is about teaching our hearts what matters to God. That's what it's about. Does my heart know what matters to God? Not my head. Do I feel that I know what God thinks is important? So the father killed the fattened calf. He invited all the friends over. They're dancing. And the older brother doesn't get it. And quite frankly, the younger brother doesn't get it. The younger brother, all he wanted was, a bed in the bunk and a job. But the father wants them to both understand, to feel it. So what does he do? He throws a party. Throw a party to celebrate the significance of the people around you. It is a gift to them. Because when we throw a party, like when you go to a wedding and there's dancing and there's a great meal, here's what it says. It says to this couple, you matter and your marriage matters. And when you bless a friend with, just investing a meal in them and being with them and lavishing blessing on them, you are saying, you matter. A little while back, Susan and I had a bunch of friends over. We set a really long table. We had really good food and good drink because these were all people that, we all raised our kids together. And I wanted them to know how grateful I am for them, for the investment they made in my kids' lives through the years. And there is a book called Every Moment Holy by Douglas McKelvey. And in the book, there is this blessing, this liturgy of feasting with friends. And we read that together. I want to share it with you because what I think is important is that we feel this, right? We feel what this is about. So on the screen, you'll see it. I'm going to read the light print. I'm going to ask you to read the dark print with me. It says, to gather joyfully is indeed a serious affair, for feasting and all enjoyment, gratefully taken, are at their heart acts of war, he says. Together, in celebrating this feast, we declare that evil and death, suffering and loss, sorrow and tears will not have the final word. But the joy of fellowship and welcome and comfort of friends, new and old, and the celebration of these blessings of food and drink, conversation and laughter, are the true evidences of things eternal and are the first fruits of that great glad joy that is to come and that will be unending. Together? So let our feast this day be joined. So those sure victories secured by Christ, let it be to us now a delight and a glad foretaste of his eternal kingdom. Bless us, O Lord, in this feast. And we ate and we enjoyed each other as a celebration of the life that God had given us together. Friends, if you claim the table, reclaim the table, that means that there will be times, can't be all the time, there will be times of pure celebration to help people feel the things that matter to God. So, reclaim the table. Follow Jesus. He came eating and drinking. We can do that too. Now, I know in most cases, when we think about discipling people, we think about something we're reading or some class and we're being taught. And yet, at the table, making disciples is really about what we feel. It's about matters of the heart. It's about how people experience you. It's about gushing in gratitude and embracing someone else who may have a very different perspective from you and celebrating their life because their life matters so much that Jesus gave his life so they could know him. All of these are gifts. And of course, discipleship is more than this, but it's never less than this. So make time. I know some of you think, man, we're so busy, we rarely ever sit down at the table together. Well, just reclaim at least some time, some nights when you sit down and you have this time together. And in so doing, it can give rich blessing both to you and to everyone at the table. The voiceover in the video that you heard before this message started, my daughter wrote that. It was an overwhelming gift that she gave to me on one of my birthdays. And she painted this picture, this beautiful picture of what it is for our family to come together and to love each other that way. And I got to tell you, if you could have been at our table when she was growing up, you would be totally unimpressed. I assure you. It was hit and miss, pass and fail. I mean, all the time. And to think that somehow, as an adult, she could look back at that and think that something good happened there is hard for me to imagine. And yet, we do this too by grace. We embrace this gift, not because we have it all figured out or we're going to always do it right, but just trusting that the very God who gave his son for us will show up in the midst of this and give blessing that is beyond our comprehension. Reclaim the table. Let's do this together. Would you bow with me? Father, what a gift that you've given us in your son, Jesus. I thank you for the grace that comes to all who open their hearts and their minds to say, Jesus, I need you. I need your forgiveness. I need your salvation. I need you in my life. And with this grace comes so much more. It's grace upon grace. It is you continuing to lavish on us far beyond all that we could ask or think. And so now as we seek as a people to reclaim the table, we ask God that you would bless our time sharing meals together and including people and blessing people, accepting people, and showing our deep gratitude for you. And I pray it in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you, oh God, we live for you. Sing Jesus. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Open up my eyes in wonder. Show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those